to Paranormal NL Podcast. That's PNL Podcast for short. And we're located in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. I'm your host and founder, Jen Noseworthy. Thank you for tuning in to UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in Ireland and 105.3 FM on that Gulf. Watch and listen to PNL Podcast every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on UPRNTalkRadio.com. Now for tonight's St. Paddy's Day Irish High Strangeness special on UPRN segment number 71, I've got a Newfie Irish guest waiting backstage from Gander, Newfoundland, Canada, who I'll bring on shortly. Now it's time to put on something green so the fae and leprechauns don't pinch ya. Grab your favorite Irish or green drink and a few green munchies and get ready for that show tonight. Paranormal NL Podcast is sponsored by the Bog Team. It's a boots-on-the-ground Bog Team doing historical paranormal investigations in Newfoundland, Canada. Smash those subscribe buttons and grab your PNL Podcast and Bog Team merch at TeePublic on their Linktree Paranormal NL Podcast. All Bog Team music heard in the intro and the exit is available for download and use on all social media and streaming music platforms. PNL Podcast believes in supporting international paranormal networking and highlighting global paranormal people, places, and things. Now, let's get on with the show tonight. I'm going to pull on stage. We've got Robert Hiscock. Welcome.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome back, should I say, Rob. You were on Paranormal NL Podcast before and on UPRN before.
Yeah, I think this is my third time chatting with you, I think.
Yeah, you were actually on. You had to go back and listen to him. He was on season 2, episode 4. That was before we joined UPRN, and he was on UPRN Segment 18. So go back and check him out. And that was on season 3, episode 11 of PNL. You're gonna love it. So
Which may also have been St. Patrick's Day, I think.
I know, it was great. Woohoo, I love it. And you've got your green on, a wee bit of green. I got a bit of green in my hat here somewhere and behind me. And yes, so to the folks listening all the way around the world who haven't listened to your podcast or episode last St. Paddy's, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a blogger, podcaster based in Newfoundland and Labrador. I live in Gander, which is the central part of the island. And I guess what I talk about mostly is just stories. I especially like weird stories. It's things from the past, things in the about this place. So what I really write about is Newfoundland and Labrador and whatever's going on here, whatever has gone on.
Yeah, we do have a lot of weirdness here, don't we? That's why I said Irish high strangeness. Now, for the folks listening who are a bit confused as to why we're calling ourselves Irish, do you want to explain that?
Half of us are. a lot of the island's heritage. We have a lot of Irish immigrants who've settled here, so we have a lot of Irish customs that have persisted here, and a lot of people think we even sound pretty Irish still.
Yes, actually, my folks were over in Dublin, over in Ireland on a cruise or something. And and the folks came over and they just thought they were locals. They were like, so what part of Dublin are you from? And my folks were like, we're not from here.
Yeah.
Because they had the real thick Irish accent, and the deeper interior Newfoundland you go, the thicker the accent gets, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we are... Newfoundland's an interesting place in many, many ways, but one of the things I think that makes us most interesting is that historically, we had a lot of isolated small communities. So people settled from wherever they came from in these communities, and the accents that they had, the customs that they had, weren't contaminated by the outside a whole lot. So we still have a lot of the old things persist here that maybe have disappeared in Ireland or disappeared in England, but we've sort of held on to them here.
Yes, and a lot of it crosses over, like the Fae and all the different culture and stuff like that. Now, I pulled up your YouTube, folks. If you're looking for Robert Hiscock on with his product of Newfoundland, it's product of NFLD on over here on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and give you a little bit of taste of Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, I can't seem to make this on the full screen, so I'm just going to play it from here. And hopefully you can hear it good. Let me unmute it, and here we go.
I don't need last names to know who Tony, Marie, and Eddie are. And I can find my way from happy adventure to misery point in the fog. My morning comes a half an hour earlier, and any day without RDF is good. I've tasted Toutons, I've seen a mummer, and I know that bake apples don't grow on trees because I'm a product of this place. So if you're a product of Newfoundland too, and you like Newfoundland trivia, facts, and folklore, this is the place for you. Join me, Robert, as I explore all the things that make this island an incredibly cool place to live. Click subscribe, like, share, do all that stuff.
I love it.
I'm sure there are so many things in there that many of your listeners do not know.
No, that's the next thing I was just going to say. Let's explain to the folks listening what the heck they just listened to.
Yes. Where do we start with that?
So that's a good one. Yeah, considering the weather has been so weird.
Yeah, RDF here is our shortened form of rain, saying rain, drizzle, and fog, which is a very predominant weather condition here.
It is. And, you know, we're one of the foggiest places, if not the foggiest place in the world. I'm pretty sure when I had Eddie Sher on, because you mentioned Eddie Sher. Now, he's not on TV right now, but when he was, I'm pretty sure that we both talked about the fog. And when it comes to paranormal stuff, you know, they like to, shall we say, live in the shadows. And the fog is a perfect way for them to get around. So Newfoundland is very ghostly.
Well, there's no shortage of fog to be hiding in here. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. What Toutons? Toutons are fried bread dough. What else did I mention there? Mummers.
Yeah.
I'm sure
what do we
about
put on the Toutons, though, right?
What do you put on Toutons?
Yeah.
What do you put on Toutons?
Most people put a bit of lassie on there, right?
I'm good with molasses.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are wondering, like, well, what is that? So you get bread dough and put it in the ball, throw it on a pan, fry it up, and there you go. That's a Touton. And people have that for breakfast. Some people even have it for supper and have a whole meal out of it. And of course, what do we put on the side? A bit of wild bologna, right, Rob?
Yeah. Toutons are another, like, I think depending on what cove or bay you grew up in, like people have different kinds of rules for what you call different things, right? So like, yeah. I think Toutons, the way you describe them, are the way that I would have grown up thinking about Toutons. But I know a lot of people wouldn't consider it a Touton unless it contains salt pork as well. And there are some people out there listening now and say it's something totally different if you put salt pork in it. I'm sure.
No, some people deep fry them, but I you know, that's a bit weird for me having a deep fried Touton.
I started to venture into donut territory.
Yeah, I agree. But there's a lot of other stuff that Newfoundland is famous for. I know for St. Patty's, I mean, well, we got a lot of beer down on George Street, don't we? Do you want to explain to some folks what that place is?
George Street. It is a street in downtown St. John's that is populated pretty much by nothing but bars. So it is. It's probably got like the most bars per square foot of certainly anywhere on the island and probably beyond.
And, you know, St. John's is the oldest city in North America. So you can't take 2 steps without bumping into a ghost down there. And you're going to bump into all kinds of different ghosts, right? You're going to bump into pirates. You're going to bump into people from the war. You're going to bump into all different kinds of ghosts. Do you have any ghosts you can think of that you might bump into down there?
I mean, there's lots of legends of ghosts from downtown St. John's, like you said.
Where's Dale Jarvis, right? Let's get him on too. And
he can tell you about the ghost stories better than I can. Well, I mean, you know the story of the last fatal duel in St. John's.
Ooh, tell me about that one.
Well, I'm gonna mess up on the dates, but anyway, a long time ago, there was a duel. There were 2 men. Apparently, they were probably fighting over a woman. That's what it probably comes down to.
Probably, yeah.
They
a nice lassie.
Normally, when they were having duels, like duels were kind of weirdly gentlemanly thing, like you weren't actually supposed to shoot the other person, but one guy kind of went a little bit rogue and he did shoot this other person.
Oops.
And so the guy died, and anyway, they settled the whole thing out in court. And you can go on my blog, I've gone through the entire story, the court trials and everything that happened. And but they say every so often that you will see the duel replay itself in downtown St. John's.
I believe it, because you mentioned the courthouse, and down there's a lot of different spooky stories down there, and a lot of different ghosts down around that area, especially around like Duckworth Street and stuff like that. I think that's where, because the courthouse is on two different streets, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of people who were hung down there. There's a lot of old stories about that. Now, I'm looking at your Strange Truths and Tall Tales, your podcast, and I love that you got a Kraken on it, because, or you can also call it a giant squid, right? Because on my logo, you can't see it there right now, but I have got one there who's enveloping a tall ship, because we're really known for fishing and tall ships and whatnot. But tell us about the giant squid here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, well, we are responsible for like an incredible number of specimens of giant squid that are known. And some of the giant squid kind of took the leap from being, fiction cryptid to real life thing here when in Portugal Cove, they managed a ship. A small boat actually was sort of, I don't know if I want to use the word, attacked seems like the right word. Like it kind of enveloped the boat in its tentacles.
And that's just down the road from where I'm at. So, I mean, this was even on Red Earth Uncovered. I don't know if you've watched APTN, but they even had it on there too. They came here and did a big story on it.
I have I've talked about it on the podcast and on the blog. I think I have a story called "The Kid and the Squid," which is interesting because it was a fairly young kid who used a hatchet that was in the boat to cut off the arm of the squid to free the boat. And then when they came ashore, they had this physical evidence of the squid that they could share with a local naturalist who went on then to document squids and provide all kinds of evidence to science.
Yeah, and if you want to see a squid, or a giant squid, you can go down to the Rooms Museum. We've got one down there, or part of one. And I think I told somebody one time that one of my grandfathers, who was a sea captain, they had caught a big squid too. And it's back in the day, it was fairly common to catch something like that, right?
We certainly went through a period in our history where they seemed to be, like fairly frequently seen. Like I think the one that's at the Rooms now might have been from like the early 1980s, Hare Bay area or something. It washed ashore.
I think so.
I can't think of hearing of one being found since then, which is not to say that
one Saturday morning in 1878.
I'm going to stop this, and I've got the squid here pulled up. How a giant squid. I can't see the whole thing, but I'm going to go ahead and play it. And it kind of goes over what we were just talking about, but I think you're down in the area where it was caught.
Two Newfoundland fishermen went to work and found a monster, sort of. The men spotted something strange floating in the water near Thimble Tickle, better known as Glover's Harbor these days. They rowed closer, and what they thought might have been debris from a shipwreck began thrashing around. It was a squid, a giant one, 55 feet long. Now, this isn't exactly a happy story. The squid, or devilfish as they were often called at the time, didn't get much sympathy. The men didn't try to help it back to sea. They tied it up, let the tide drain out, and the squid died. And one of the most elusive creatures in the ocean, well, it ended up as dog food. Waste not, want not, I guess. But the Glover's Harbor squid wasn't forgotten. It was Guinness certified for its size, put on a stamp by Canada Post, and immortalized with a massive life-size statue that's on display in Glover's Harbor. Only in Newfoundland, I guess, could the dog's dinner get a second life as a tourist attraction.
So it wasn't just
one Saturday morning.
Place, it was another place, right?
There have been numerous giant squid found, right? After I posted that, somebody sent me a story about how their grandfather had a very similar experience in Fogo,
Yep.
thinking it was an overturned dory, but it turned out to be a squid.
Oh yeah, I totally believe it. My aunt told me about somebody else who, I don't know if it was related to my pop, who was a fisherman, or somebody else who was out fishing and caught the big squid, and they hung it up in their shower, just dry it out
Wow.
over the shower curtain.
That I think most of us have, like, I don't know, bucket list things they'd like to experience or see in their life. And one of mine is I would like to happen upon a giant squid in the wild. Like, I know if it happens, it's likely to be a dead giant squid. And I also know the likelihood of it happening is very slim, and there's almost nothing I can do to make that happen. If it ever does happen, it'll be completely luck. But I would love to experience.
No, that squid that was in your video, there's one that's like that out in Dildo. And for the folks listening around the world, yes, we have a town called Dildo. And Jimmy, was it Jimmy Kimmel? He's wants to be the mayor of Dildo. But there is a giant squid on display out there also. And they've got lovely beer if you're looking for a St. Paddy's Day special.
Well, yeah, Newfoundland has got lots of microbreweries now, and a lot of really good ones.
Yeah, especially down in Kitty Vitty.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and there's all kinds of creatures and stuff living in our waters. Have you heard about that one, Cressy?
Oh, yeah. I had to make a pilgrimage to Crescent Lake.
Did you tell me about it?
It's beautiful. I mean, I saw nothing, but it's beautiful.
Now, some people say it's a ginormous eel or something, right?
Yes, they do say that. I think they have a nice little sculpture of a sea monster on the shores of the lake that you can get your picture taken with. But yeah, Crescent Lake is an unbelievably scenic place. If I was a giant eel, I would hang out there just for the views. It's beautiful.
Now, a lot of people have also said they've seen fae. When we talk about fae, we're talking about fairies and stuff like that. But some people say that some of the fairies they see are good, but for the majority, ours in Newfoundland are not. They're pretty scary, right?
Yeah, I think when most people told stories of the fairies, they were you didn't want to encounter fairies. Fairies did things like lead you astray in the woods, so like people would find themselves lost, and it was because people would describe being in a very familiar place, then all of a sudden nothing was familiar anymore, and they could have been discover they were miles from where they thought they were because the fairies had led them.
And some people say you should carry, like breadcrumbs in your pocket and stuff like that to give to the fae. And then, of course, over on Bell Island, we got the queen of the fae over there. So you don't want to come in contact with the fae underground in the tunnels. Yeah.
I don't know if I know that. What's that?
Oh, yeah, that's something scary. It lives in Bell Island. You'll have to check out the episode with Henry Crane in season 1 and season 2. You'll absolutely love it. He tells all kinds of wild Newfoundland stories about Bell Island. And let me tell you, part of the reason why I started this podcast was when I was actually working over there and had a lot of weirdness happen that's completely unexplained. And unless you experience it for yourself, it's kind of hard to explain, because I was always a long time being set medical, kind of a bit of a molder and a scully, like a skeptic, right? But had so many high strangeness things happen paranormally in hospitals, you just tend to wonder, like, what is going on? So that's what kind of got me into the paranormal, doing this podcast and also doing paranormal investigations. And I was mentioning to you off screen, I actually have a cat ball. I'll take this off. And, I just like to have stuff around the house, just, sometimes every now and again. And these things are really hard to get to trigger. And I've actually got it on the windowsill in something. So there's nothing bumping it or anything. And quite often while I'm talking, it'll go off.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've done several investigations in our house where we've had some spooky stuff going on too. But all the way around anywhere in Newfoundland, really, no matter where you go, you're going to find some spooky, fun stuff. If you're into that kind of stuff.
There are spooky stories everywhere.
Have you ever experienced anything weird that you just can't explain? Besides screeching somebody and making them kiss a fish on the lips? Codfish?
No, not really, I don't think.
No?
Not personally. Years ago, when I was a student, I used to work at Terranova National Park, and one of my this is not a ghost story, but one of my job used to have me working up until midnight lots of nights. And part of my job was to work at different campgrounds, and they had one campground which was tended to be fairly quiet most summer nights. And I worked there alone until midnight, and basically the campers were like a kilometer or more away from me, and I was just sort of in this little office space making sure that the place didn't fall apart. And one night a car came up to the building I was in, and they stopped, and the people reported seeing something in this, like they asked me, like, is there any tower on top of this building? And I was like, no, it's just a campground up there. And they saw something in the night sky. They were visibly scared, whatever they saw. And I was like, you're sure it's not a flare? And there was no way it's a flare. So I spent the rest of that night sitting there quietly beside the highway in my little building, wondering if I was about to be abducted by aliens. But that's, I think, my closest to a truly paranormal experience.
Well, at around, I guess I say at around the bay, right? Like when we say that, we mean away from the city. There's less city lights. So a lot of people who I talked to had UFO encounters will say that if they see a light, it actually attracts them to come and see what it is.
Okay.
So if you're like in a campsite or something, and maybe you've got a flashlight or something on the go, you might bring that in to check you out because it's wondering, what's that? Just the same way as you're wondering, what's that?
Yes.
And a lot of people do the CE5. I don't know if you're quite familiar with that is, but they'll call them in. And kind of like on Skinwalker Ranch, Beyond Skinwalker. I don't know if you've watched that or not, but there's some pretty cool events there that happen. But Newfoundland, actually, I've had a lot of people before all the orb stuff started happening before Christmas, that 2024, was it? I had a lot of people send me a lot of drone pictures. And I thought, no, it can't be in Newfoundland, right? But then all over the world it started happening, and I was like, oh, I shouldn't have brushed that off because there was a lot of different weird pictures, right? Mm. So makes you wonder, maybe we do have stuff on the go out here.
Who knows? Who knows?
You never know. And we got lots of different cryptid creatures too, because we were once part of the Appalachian Mountains. So I'm sure some people, will go looking for Bigfoot, Wendigo, and different things like that.
Have you heard any Newfoundland Bigfoot stories?
I've heard some people say, oh, I've seen Bigfoot or I've seen strange things. And, I can see how that could easily happen because there's lots of places for it to hide.
We have a very sparsely populated interior, that's for sure.
Yes.
I only know of, I have in my, reading of Newfoundland folklore and whatnot, come across some stories from Labrador, which I don't remember well enough to tell you now, other than to say that there have been stories from Labrador that seem fairly consistent with what people often describe as Bigfoot. And one from...
I think they call him the hairy man up there, don't they? I think.
Possibly. These particular stories referred to the creature, none of them referred to creature as Bigfoot, but I'm just sort of lumping it sort of as it generally fit the description. And there's one from Newfoundland that gets told. I'm fairly sure it was fictitious. Like I've been trying to track it down because it's a story I'm going to tell on the blog from the northern peninsula of Newfoundland, probably from the early 1900s, where according to the story, a gentleman shot at a creature that, again, loosely fits the description of Bigfoot.
Okay.
To me, the only... Newfoundlanders will know. The earliest reference I can find to the story, it goes back to the Barrelman days, which was a radio program where they used to share history and stories, much like I do on my blog, actually, but they did it in a radio format in like 1940s, 1950s era. And that's the earliest reference I can find to this story, and I can't find anything to back it up besides that. And I sort of feel like they're...
Well, we do have a lot of critters on the island that not very many other places have, like the puffin, for example. And of course, not everybody has the caribou or the moose, or, when you look at it, like all of our stuff, yes, you're going to see a lot of it up in the Arctic, like the lynx and polar bear and things like that. But all that is really foreign to most people in the world, right? I mean, it's nothing for a Labrador to go out and, hey, Mr. Polar Bear, how's it going? Or even in Newfoundland to see a polar bear walking around your community.
That's another one of my bucket list things, is to see a polar bear in the wild from a safe distance.
Now, a lot of people get completely confused with our time zone. I mean, we are way out in the middle of the Atlantic. And when you're doing a podcast with somebody, they're like, why is it 30 minutes extra? You're like, yeah, we get to bring in the new year first in North America twice, once here in Newfoundland and then again in Labrador.
Yeah, we have our own half-hour time zone.
And then, if you look at, for example, I think, is this the Torngat Mountains? It looks like it.
That is Western Brook Pond in Grossmorn.
Oh, okay. I mean, just look at it. I mean, you can see how remote it is and how easy, if something wants to hide out in the woods somewhere, sure. Why not, right?
I think, speaking of Western Brook Pond, that's another oddity about the island. We call almost all freshwater bodies ponds, even though everywhere else in the world they would be lakes. Like Western Brook Pond is huge, and you can't really tell from the picture, but those mountains are enormous.
I am one of those people, and a lot of people will correct me and go, that's a lake, not a pond. I'm like, well, it's a pond.
It has to be really big, with the exception of Kitty Vitty Lake in St. John's. It has to be really, really big before we call it a lake.
Right? Yeah, I agree. Now, for the people watching or looking at this, do you want to explain what's hanging underneath it? Because that's another weird thing that we're known for, right?
Salt cod, dried salted cod. Yeah. I mean, the whole, basically Newfoundland was colonized for access to the cod because we had such incredible quality and amount of cod here. And back in the day, before refrigeration, that's how it was preserved and sent around the world. Salted
and we make a dish called fish and brews. So usually it's salted cod, it's cod that's hung up like that and dried out, usually on a flake or on the line, right? I've mostly seen it on flakes. And a flake is, I don't know how you describe that to folks. I don't know if we get a picture of a flake here. We might.
I have some somewhere on my site and stuff, but flakes are basically drying tables.
Right. Yeah. And it's something, maybe one of these would have been a flake, right?
Yeah.
Where you dry the fish. But yeah, we're very well known for colorful houses and houses literally hanging off cliffs next to the water, to the ocean. Yep. Especially down in St. John's and the Battery. And I mean, where's this one taken?
That is Champneys West in Trinity Bight.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, if you're ever going on vacation and you want to come somewhere in Newfoundland and Labrador, not only just for paranormal tourism, but just for tourism in general, you'd love it. If you love Ireland, and if you like, remote places to hang out, you're going to love it. And we've got lots of ghostly fishermen too, don't we?
Yeah, that's a story I told on the podcast around Halloween. And it's more, there's a Newfoundland connection, definite Newfoundland connection to it, but maybe it's more of a maritime story. It's about the fishing schooner, the Charles Haskell. I don't know if you've come across that one in your travels. It's a fairly well-known story about a bank schooner from based out of Massachusetts, I guess. And it was fishing George's Bank, and some say it came to St. John's. But in any case, in a big storm, it inadvertently ran into another ship and caused that other ship to sink, and everybody on board died. The Charles Haskell itself was badly damaged. When it was repaired and went back to fishing the next season, it was back on the banks again near the same place the accident had happened. And according to widespread stories, the crew of the other ship floated to the surface of the water, came up, climbed aboard the Charles Haskell, and continued fishing all night long.
Came out of Davy Jones' locker, and that's spooky, right?
Yeah. And it got to the point where apparently nobody would sail on the Charles Haskell anymore because it was reputed to be the most haunted ship in the oceans. And eventually it was sold off and used no longer for fishing because
Yeah, they were saying at a certain time every night they would come up on board and just continue fishing like there wasn't anybody around. And we call that kind of like, I guess in this case, it wouldn't be a stone tape theory because it's a wooden ship, right? It'd be more like just like a residual where they go about their business, but they don't really look at you, right? But you see them. So that's what I understand what happened with that one. But that is kind of spooky, though. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and it formed. I think the story lives on mostly now as a folk song. There's Newfoundland variants of the folk song, and apparently up and down the eastern seaboard, there's different versions of that tale told in song, which you can find if you. I've got links to it on the blog, but if you just Google the Ghostly Fisherman or George's Banks Fisherman on YouTube or whatever, you'll find renditions of the song.
And not just that one. I mean, we've got so many different pirate stories and so many different. I guess when you say ghostly fisherman, or I mean, my great grandfather, he was a harbor boat pilot. Sure, he was lost in the Narrows out there. And we've gotten some weird stuff out there on Fort Amherst, like really highly intelligent spirit out there. Like, yeah, like they will tell you word for word of what's going on and tell you or talk to you by name and, oh, welcome back and stuff like that. Some people would, get freaked out by it, but it is pretty interesting.
I don't know what I can't remember everything we talked about in the past, but you mentioned pirates a couple of times now.
I did, yeah.
I grew up, the town I am from, the community I'm from, the village I am from, is called Happy Adventure. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And Happy Adventure is an unusual place name, obviously. Nobody's quite sure where it came from. There's a number of theories. One theory is that it was named because pirates in the area evaded capture, and it was a happy adventure. And that's where the name came from. But I always think it's more interesting that Newfoundland's most famous pirate, Peter Easton, his vessel was called the Happy Adventure.
Oh.
So, there's another pirate connection there. And then there's a couple other theories of the name.
I think I've got a short here with Peter Easton that we could play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. It says Peter Easton Pure Pirate Glow Up. You want me to put that one on?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. Just give me a sec. Keep gibbering away while I'm looking for it.
Well, the area I'm from, very close to Happy Adventure. Happy Adventure's on a peninsula, the Eastport Peninsula. And there was a community on the peninsula called Damnable. And there's Damnable Bay and Damnable Island there. They changed their name a long time ago because somebody thought that it sounded bad to say you were.
I was going to say, sounds like you're swearing at somebody.
Yeah. But the legendary origin of the story, again, is connected to pirates. And this time pirates were apparently caught while they were in pursuit. And they were caught because the ship's bell rang. So they said, "Damn the bell." And that led to the name of the community. And these days, we've really reclaimed the name Damnable, and there's a network of trails, and there's a festival every year called the Damnable Trail Festival, and people do these very strenuous hikes. And
we've got all kinds of weird names for places and festivals, don't we? Okay, I found Peter Easton. I'm going to pull it up.
Once had a pirate admiral, not a tall tale, a real-life man. His name was Peter Easton. He started legit, Queen Elizabeth's privateer, raiding enemy ships for the crown. But when King James pulled his license, Easton had already fallen in love with the lifestyle and kept right on raiding. That made him a full-fledged pirate. He sailed into Harbor Grace shortly after 1600 with 10 ships, built a fort, and started charging protection money up and down the Atlantic. Easton wasn't the kind of man to back down either. When Basque pirates came for his fort, he fought back hard. He lost 50 men but held the fort. When he was done pirating, he sailed to the Mediterranean, bought a palace, and lived rich to the end. No gallows, no heartbreak, just pure pirate glow-up. Peter Easton, he was a pirate who understood the assignment. Want the full story? Hit up productofnewfoundland.ca. Newfoundland once had a pirate admiral.
So, it's a very big part of Newfoundland and Labrador. A lot of people, I guess, maybe forget about it, but, we were under siege by pirates for a long time. And I want to say that down on Duckworth Street, they got the Duke of Duckworth. He was a real person, right? So he was actually the governor of Newfoundland at a certain point, and he kind of helped get rid of a lot of these pirates who were, I guess, plundering Newfoundland.
Yeah, Newfoundland was a pirate hotspot, not because we had a lot of gold for them or anything like that, but what we did have lots of was skilled sailors, and
Yes.
pirates needed skilled sailors. We had a lot of poorly defended ports, so people could get ships here. And they had lots of storehouses stocked with things to get them through the fishing season, so pirates could replenish their ships by coming here. So it was a sort of the Costco of its day, really.
That's right. Yeah, you never know what they're going to take or what they're going to do. And you're listening in on UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM on that Gulf. I had to throw that in there. And Paranormal NL, just so y'all know, this is our group. Don't go to the page. That's just for Instagram drops. We are a safe space under Safe Space Alliance. Come and check us out. I had to throw that in there. Here's our trying to find your stuff. Here we go. What is Product of Newfoundland? Well, you got the best of both worlds. You got a blog, and you've also got your podcast. Did you want to get into, why you have both or not just one? But every time you Google Newfoundland, Product of Newfoundland comes up first, and I love that.
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't working to have that happen. Why do I have both? I started with the storytelling in textual format. So I started writing blog posts years ago, and somebody suggested to me once upon a time, many people suggested to me, I guess as they were reading the blog, that this would work as a podcast as well. And I was always really hesitant to do it. And then I guess I just thought, well, maybe it would. Maybe some people don't want to read stuff. Maybe they'd rather listen to it. Yeah, then I could imagine people listening while they were driving and learning about some of our history and some of our stories. And I just took the plunge into it. And another side of what I do on the blog is not only historical. I look at current pop culture as well. So I thought it would be fun to sort of merge the two and invite artists and makers from today telling the stories of this place and pairing it with stories from the past. And that seemed to resonate with people. And then just recently I've gotten into the video making, the shorts that you've been doing here today, and that really seems to resonate with people.
It is. Yeah, I really love the shorts too. They're really fun, I have to say, because people get to hear the accent, hear a lot about the culture and the history. Like, dogberries aren't they're that's like the ones on the dogberry tree. A lot of them say that, hey, okay, if you see a lot of dogberries in the tree, that means that we're going to have a really wicked winter because the birds are going to need them, right, to eat them.
That's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to dogberry lore.
Right? And then you got Sable Chief here, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Some people, laugh, oh, it sounds like dogs. Well, we do have a big history with Newfoundland, right, dogs and Labrador dogs.
They both originated here.
Yes. And the Newfoundland dog, they're really good for, the sailors used them, didn't they? And in the war for saving people because they swim really well.
They do, and so do the Labradors. They started as like the greater and lesser Newfoundland, I think, is what they were sort of once known as. And the Labrador dog got named Labrador for mysterious purposes because it really came from the island as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's speculated that because so many people came to Newfoundland for the Labrador fishery that they just they got stuck with the name Labrador, even though the actual dogs themselves came from the island.
And funny enough, we don't see a whole lot of them around. I know there's a couple dogs that'll go up to Signal Hill during tourist season. You can get your picture with them and stuff. And there used to be one on the Scademia ship that went out, but that one's out of service right now, the tall ship. And whenever you Google, a lot of times Newfoundland besides yours, you'll see dogs come up, right? And people are like, no, I'm not looking for a dog. I'm looking for Newfoundland.
I love our dogs, and I wouldn't want them to be named after anywhere else. But it is a slight pet peeve of mine that when you're looking up stuff about this place,
Right? Yeah, the dog.
Pictures.
But they're really good companions, very loyal. Yeah, so you got all kinds of sea monster stories here in Newfoundland and Labrador. We talked about a few, and there's so many other ones, like there's mermaids. What other ones can you think of?
Well, you mentioned Cressy. Let's see.
And a squid, and of course, a lot of the fishermen and folks would talk about the mermaids and that. And yeah, there's so many different ones. And the Bell Island boom, I mean, that in itself is very paranormal. We don't know what the heck happened out there. Sure, William Shatner did an entire story on the History Channel on the Bell Island boom.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
And I did an in-depth interview with, again, I'll talk about Henry Crane back again. That's in season 1 or 2 about that. And it's very paranormal. And there's a lot of extra evidence that he talks about from the locals there that happened that a lot of people don't actually know about. Mm-hmm. And the horrible haunting in St. John's. We've got a lot of old places. I mean, I didn't even mention the Four Sisters downtown. That is for, I guess you'll call it apartment housing that was built way back when with the actual bricks of what was made out of Signal Hill, and that went through the fire. And I think they survived all the great fires of Newfoundland back in the 1800s.
Yeah, St. John's burned so many times. So there's wherever anything is standing now, there's something stood there before. There's a whole lost history, and so many beautiful buildings have been lost over time.
Yes. And if you look back in a lot of the pictures, you'll see these tall ships in the harbor. Like that's all you saw in the harbor, right? Back in the day was all these tall ships.
St. John's was a very cosmopolitan place, right? There were people from all over the world were fishing the Grand Banks, and they were using St. John's as a stopover point. So there would be nothing to come to St. John's and hear, multiple languages and music from all over the world being played on various tall ships in the harbor. I would love to go back and experience that in person.
We get a lot of Irish music here too, and a lot of really good musicians. If you like music, come here. You're going to hear a lot of folks. I mean, we can name a few, the Irish Descendants. Who comes to mind? I know you play a lot of music and talk about some music in your blog. Is there any music that you want to give a shout out to local?
Oh, my goodness.
There's so many, right?
There is so much, and so much of it is not what people would probably think about when they think about Newfoundland music, which I love. The band called Paper Tiger I've written about recently. They're phenomenal. There's another artist, Feminautica, who's just released a very sort of dancey album, which is phenomenal. Tandy Marie has a new single out now. I think she's from Malawi originally, but Newfoundland is home now. So much cool stuff is coming out here. Like, we punch way above our weight. Like, when you think about the population that we have here and the kind of art that's being generated here, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, we've got a big mix, that's for sure. And a pterodactyl on Bell Island. That's the first I've heard of that one.
Okay. That's I think early 1900s. Bell Island is all mines, right? Or Bell Island was settled largely for the mining, iron ore mines. And they found a fossil in the early, I think 1902. And the people who found the fossil swear it was a pterodactyl. They assembled it all. They what they found they knew was something special. They took it out. They assembled it. They decided it was a pterodactyl. They said it had wings. All of that stuff.
That would be a perfect place for one to live, wouldn't it?
Well,
it's like a big rock, right?
Yeah, except it shouldn't be. Like the rocks are the wrong age for a pterodactyl to be in them. But it seems quite likely that they found some kind of fossil there. Of course, like in most of these stories, the actual fossil has disappeared. It was.
Oh God! The Smithsonian got their hands on it.
So we'll never know for sure what they found. But the people who were there and tell the story believe it was a pterodactyl.
Yeah, probably. You never know. It could have flew over here. We get all kinds of birds, when we have a windstorm who are lost and don't know what they're at, and they're supposed to be from down south or something.
I've heard it said or suggested somewhere in my reading that the only way it could possibly have been a pterodactyl is if a pterodactyl basically died and fell into a crevice in the rock that already existed, and then it became fossilized in that crevice, because the rock around it is of the wrong age to have a pterodactyl in it.
Yeah, you never know, right? There's so many different situations that could have happened back then.
Yeah.
We got a lot of other different Irish stuff, like Father Duffy's Well. Isn't that like a spring or something?
Yeah, it's a spring.
That's the one that's out in Holyrood?
Salmon Ear Line, yeah.
Salmon Ear,
that
yes,
area.
yeah.
And it's sort of a little rest stop along the highway these days. But the story is that Father Duffy, who was a priest in St. Mary's, not too far from where the well is, I guess. These days, it doesn't seem too far. In his time, you had to walk it, so it was quite a distance. He didn't get along well with some businessmen in the town, and they sort of over the location of a church and fish flakes, actually. And so Father Duffy wanted the fish flakes removed because they were getting in the way of the church. And eventually there was a bit of a fuss in the town, and the fish flakes got burned. And people said that Father Duffy had incited the riot that led to the fish flakes burning. So he got in trouble with the law. So he had to go back and forth to St. John's in court, which was a lengthy walk. They say he logged something like 1,500 miles back and forth before the court case was finally done between St. Mary's and St. John's. And on one of these walks, they stopped because they needed a place to rest. They couldn't find any water. And according to some stories, he kind of created this spring, potentially.
Okay.
Or, more likely he found it. But he may have created.
I have found for you.
And, they were refreshed on this long journey and search for justice. And
there you go.
Eventually they built this kind of shrine type thing around it, which still exists to this day.
Yeah, we got all kinds of cool stuff all the way around Newfoundland and Labrador. You got to come here for tourism, especially around St. Paddy's. You'll find a lot of cool Irish stuff around here, that's for sure.
You will, but if you're coming for St. Paddy's, dress for the weather.
That's true, because in March it's still pretty cold, right? I mean, it's nothing to get snow in March.
Oh, March is not spring here.
Well, on our road, there was this big pothole, and I guess the town wouldn't fill it in. So we took a leprechaun and put it in the hole. And people were just laughing at it and driving around it. I mean, that's the kind of culture that we got here,
Maybe we discussed this last year when we were talking around St. Patrick's Day, but Sheila's brush too is a very St. Patrick's related story in Newfoundland. It's a storm that supposedly happens either right before or right after St. Patrick's Day. So people count on it, basically. And ideally, we like to think it's the last big snowstorm of the winter.
We hope.
We hope is more like it.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of debate and mystery, really, as to why it got called Sheila's brush. Because some people say Sheila was a woman of significance in Patrick's life. And I think, brush is more likely is like an old Newfoundland word for storm. So it probably just meant a storm that happened around Sheila's Day, which is a day after St. Patrick's Day, I think.
Sometime around there. It's pretty close to St. Paddy's Day, yeah. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to be trapped in an iceberg during a storm like that.
No, that's a fantastic story too. Like, that's a real life story of a ship that started to sink, and there were families leaving from Newfoundland headed to Labrador for the fishery, and the only way they could survive was to climb onto this nearby iceberg, and they spent the night on this drifting piece of ice.
My gosh, I can't even imagine, right?
No.
I mean, you got we mentioned earlier, the polar bears and the killer whales. And I mean, have you seen that episode where they get the seal and they come and ram the iceberg?
No.
Like, all of them work in tandem. I mean, they got to eat,
yes.
right? But just watching how they work and how smart they are to get that poor seal on the ice was super scary.
I keep, I don't know what other listeners think. I mean, I live here, but I keep thinking when I see pictures of this place and the kind of animals that live here and what you can experience when you come here, if I didn't live here, I would want to come here. I mean, I
Right?
do live here and I get excited about it. Like,
I don't know though. If you see a picture of a mummer, would you want to come here? Like, for the folks listening, I know this is
Mummers are
Patty's
scary.
in March, but what's a mummer?
We have this old tradition, like, I guess it goes back to Twelfth Night in England, really, where they used to have, fools. So all through Christmas in Newfoundland, historically, people dressed up in costume and paraded or visited homes. And part of it was people had to guess who this visitor who in disguise was. And there was always sort of a dark and scary side to
Yeah.
Mum. It was
And then, of course, there's always got to be a hot toddy with it, right? Which
oh,
is a hot drink, right? Like a whiskey or rum or something like that to warm your bones because you're out running around in the cold in the winter with your skivvies on. Because usually you go and you wear like a bra, like a man will go around with a bra outside and underwear outside their clothes. And
Potentially,
stuff.
yeah. You tried anything to obscure who you were. So you
Right.
tried to dress
Yeah.
in such a way that it wasn't easy to tell the sex of the mummer.
Yeah.
So
We get some pretty weird traditions here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
it's a fantastic one.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
Candlemas Day, that's another weather predicting one, right? The 2nd of February. Groundhog Day everywhere else. We don't have groundhogs here, but our ancestors would have called it Candlemas, which is a religious festival, but we still used it to predict weather. Although in Newfoundland, most of the weather prediction around Candlemas Day runs completely counter to groundhog tradition, because here the rhyme was, if Candlemas Day be rough and glum, the worst of winter's yet to come, which means if it's gray outside, there's more bad weather to come. Whereas for the groundhog tradition, if it were gray outside, he wouldn't see his shadow. So winter was over.
Oh, we got lots of RDF here, so
Yeah. And I always
usually we
say
know it's going to be gray, right?
it really doesn't matter. There's no way in heck winter's going to be over anytime close to February 2nd in Newfoundland. So it really doesn't matter what the weather's like.
Yes. Yeah. There's all kinds of different stories. I think we talked about this one last time or the
Yeah.
one before and how to ward off a wicked witch. We got into that, I remember. And
warding off a
and-
wicked witch, you mentioned the dogberries before. Dogberry, what we call dogberries are called mountain ash in most other places. And also rowan trees. They're closely related to rowan trees, which is sort of a magical wood, right? So people used to use the rowan trees to ward off curses. So dogberries can ward off curses, I think.
there you go. If you see a witch, just throw some dogberries at her. Be gone.
I came across an interesting story about dogberries. Again, this is from
Did you?
the dim past, but there's a town in Newfoundland called Newtown, and there was a special dogberry tree there that people used to sometimes, they would pass a baby through a fork in the trunk of a dogberry tree. If anybody knows mountain ash or dogberries, they tend to be very forked trees with lots of trunk, like spaces in their trunk. And passing a baby through a fork in this tree was thought to magically protect it from illness.
Oh.
So sort of which I guess, when you think way back in the day, people didn't have a lot to rely on. So you did what you thought you could.
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
So we talked a lot about different places in Newfoundland and Labrador to see a ghost, just about everywhere. You
Yes.
don't have to turn very far to find one, I must say. And if you want to find some cool, strange stories and high Irish strangeness, check out Rob's blog and also check out his podcast. Do you want to give a shout out, Robert, to the folks listening?
A shout out, yeah.
Yeah.
Check it out. I'd be happy to have more visitors. I'd be even happier to know the stories that you have to tell. I like it all to be. It's very I don't want to be the only one telling stories. Stories are better when they're shared back and forth. Tell me the stuff that you know.
Yeah, so listen, if you're watching and you're on the live chat watch party, put in the comments section a story that you want Robert to talk about on his blog or on his podcast. And I'm sure, you never know, you might see it on there because he's got all kinds of Irish high strangeness from Newfoundland and Labrador.
I'm always looking for news stories, things that get me excited.
Yes. So do you have a favorite one? Because there's so many.
I don't know. It is hard. I do like. I like the story of Anne Harvey, who from Isle Mort, Island of the Dead, in Newfoundland, who was instrumental in saving the lives of a bunch of people in a shipwreck, like 100 people. Like I forget the number, but a lot of people. She and her father and their Newfoundland dog rowed back and forth in a dory to these people who were wrecked on a rock, and brought them all back to their very tiny sort of settlement, and managed to keep them alive, save their lives. It was an amazing story, and she was she was a very young woman at the time.
You know, there are some places, I want to say that they still do this, where they take the sheep and that out on an island and leave them there, so the other like wild animals don't hurt them, and they can just run around and eat the grass and that out there.
I believe that is so. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine how hard that was, putting them in a boat, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they were scared and stuff like that.
If you come to Newfoundland these days, you won't see a ton of sheep, but I mean, they were back in the day. Sheep farming was huge here.
Yeah, and just like the ponies that we got here, the Newfoundland ponies, a lot of people say that leprechauns kind of tangle their hair up, and that's why they're always in a mess, because the leprechauns will tangle up their hair. No?
No. This is a Newfoundland pony sanctuary not too far from where I live. It's in Change Islands, which is,
Well, if you're listening and you got hay, donate it to your local farmers, because there's a shortage of hay. But I'm not going to make a joke, but yeah. So if you want to help out your local farmers and places like that, donate some hay. They will love it. But Rob, do you want to give a shout out again to Product of Newfoundland and where people can find you and everything?
Sure. You can find me at Product of Newfoundland. My web address is productofnewfoundland.ca, all spelled out as the full name of the island. And then you can find me on many social medias as Product of Newfoundland, Product of NFLD. So you can and my podcast is called Strange Truths and Tall Tales. And you can get that pretty much wherever you get podcasts. And, as Jen was saying, if you forget all that, just Google Newfoundland stories and you'll probably find me.
Or just Google Newfoundland and you'll either find a dog or you'll find Product of Newfoundland. And hopefully you'll find Paranormal NL, Newfoundland and Labrador. So, folks, thanks so much for tuning in tonight to UPRN United Public Radio Network with Robert Hiscock and his Product of Newfoundland. And we're going to leave you now with some Bog Team music. I think we'll put on some, what do you want, rock and roll, metal, rap, or I can put on some folk music. It's kind of slow, but
I'll leave it up to rock, something rockish.
Yeah, okay, let's put some rock on. Well, let's rock on. Have a great St. Paddy's Day, y'all. Don't drink too much green beer now.